The EU's top leadership is in Kyiv for an EU-Ukraine summit. It's the first to take place since the country was given candidate status just last June. Brussels is pledging to support Ukraine while at the same time trying to rein in expectations for a speedy membership. The European Council President Michel spoke to France 24 earlier. Here's what he had to say.
Okay, quick outside.
I think we have to support Ukraine for as long as we can. We feel there's a strong political will to implement the necessary reforms. Look at what has happened in the few months since Ukraine got candidate status. It was last June. Great strides have been made in strengthening the rule of law, the fight against corruption, independence of the judiciary. There's still some way to go, of course, but we'll be with Ukraine all the way to support their wish to come into the European Union.
European Council President Michel speaking there. We can now bring in France 24's European Affairs editor Armen Georgian. Armen, great to see you. First up, Kyiv would like to ideally become a member of the European Union within the next 2 years. That's unprecedented. It's never happened before. How difficult will it be for European officials in Kyiv right now to try and rein in expectations?
Well, it was interesting in that soundbite of Charles Michel. He talks about helping Ukraine come towards the European Union. So he's not saying to actually bring Ukraine into the European Union. Maybe I'm splitting hairs a little bit there, but it's certainly true that there are some countries that don't want to send an overly optimistic tone on how quickly Ukraine could join. Italy, France, the Benelux countries, they're among the more skeptical countries in a sense, or realistic, depending on your point of view. Whereas, not surprisingly, Delano, some of the Baltic states, Poland, those that are closer to Ukraine and are more directly impacted by the war, there's more of a sort of will among those countries to bring in Ukraine a bit faster. But of course, the European Union is a club. It's a big club. Everybody has to agree on major decisions. And as a collective, they can't agree to bring Ukraine in faster than they brought in other EU countries, because ultimately the EU is a block of rules. And you can't just start making up new rules that could set a precedent. There are countries that have been saying, okay, we understand Ukraine is in a very difficult position, but if we give it some kind of special procedure, that's not really fair to other countries that have been either waiting for a long time or who did join but never had any kind of fast track or special process. So that's really the rub of it.
And it begs the question, because not only does Ukraine need to reform, the country is relying on foreign aid right now, plus it also needs to clean up its act when it comes to corruption. One analyst I read said it would take 10 years to just get a dent to try and fix the problem. So clearly there's a lot the country needs to do before it's eligible for to become an European member state.
Yeah, of course, rule of law is a crucial issue, as we see between Brussels and existing EU member states like Poland or Hungary, for example. And it's certainly a big issue in Ukraine. There was a high-profile
raid, which took place just on the eve of Ursula von der Leyen's visit to Kyiv.
So I don't know if that was a coincidence or not, but certainly the message that was being sent by the fact that...
Indeed, the optics were good.
Yeah, the Ukrainian authorities actually released photos of the raid on the home of Ihor Kolomoisky, one of the most well-known tycoons in Ukraine. That obviously was sending a message to Brussels. Now, obviously, yes, Ukraine has set up a lot of bodies, a new bureau to investigate corruption, another to prevent corruption. There's also this high anti-corruption court of Ukraine that is being set up, something called Prozoro for public procurement. But if we look at the actual corruption rankings, Delano, in Transparency International's index of corruption perceptions, you've got Ukraine scoring pretty low in 2022. Now, okay, that was a year when the war, of course, took up most of that year. But in general, the last few years, Ukraine has ranked quite low in that index, near countries such as Egypt, Swaziland, Nepal, Sierra Leone, and Zambia. So you can imagine elites in Brussels looking at that, looking at what company Ukraine is in, if you will, in that corruptions index of Transparency International. They're going to be pretty concerned and say that there's a long way to go.
We'll see what they have to say when they speak in Kyiv. Thank you very much for that, Armen. Armen Georgian there.